She walked into a job interview, expecting a fresh start. But what she found was a photo of her long-lost mother on the CO's room wall, and the moment she pointed it out, his face turned white. Secrets buried for decades began to unravel, and what started as a simple interview became a race to uncover a deadly conspiracy. Nothing and no one was as they seemed. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Now let's jump into the story. Marla woke up to the soft beep of her alarm clock. The room was dim, filled with the early glow of morning. She blinked slowly, pulling herself out of a half-dream. Another day, another challenge. But today wasn't like the others. Today was important. She quietly stepped out of bed, careful not to wake her grandfather, who was still asleep in the next room. The old man had raised her since she was a little girl, ever since her mother passed away. Marla peeked through the crack of his door and smiled gently at the sound of his soft, steady breathing. He had grown weaker over the past year, and Marla had taken on more than her share to care for him. In the kitchen, she made a small cup of coffee, though her hands were a little shaky. Today was the interview. It's the one she had almost forgotten. She applied for Hartwell Industries. The name sounded fancy, and it was. She had seen their logo on towering buildings downtown, but never thought she'd be called in for anything like this. As she sipped her coffee, she glanced at the refrigerator. There was a faded photo stuck under a magnet, her mother Lynette, smiling brightly, holding Marla in her arms. That smile always gave Marla strength. "I hope you're with me today," she whispered to the photo. "I could use a bit of your courage." An hour later, Marla stood in front of the Hartwell building, staring up at the endless glass windows. She had never seen anything like it. Her shoes felt too old for the polished marble floors, her blouse too plain for the gold-trimmed elevator. But she held her head high and clutched her resume as if it were a shield. At the 27th floor, she was greeted by a kind-looking receptionist who asked her to wait. Marla sat down on a sleek leather couch, her heart pounding in her chest. She tried to calm her thoughts. "Breathe in, breathe out. You've got this," she told herself. The waiting room was quiet. Sunlight poured in through tall windows, casting a warm glow across the space. Marla let her eyes wander. The walls were lined with framed awards, news articles, and photographs. The far corner of the room had a large desk, clean and neatly organized. And there, on that desk, stood a black-framed photo. Something about it pulled Marla's attention. She leaned forward slightly, squinting at the image. Her breath caught in her throat, the woman in the photo. It couldn't be. But it was Lynette, her mother's face frozen in time, smiling gently. The same photo that sat on their fridge at home, only this one wasn't faded or bent. It was clean, carefully framed, and displayed like it meant something. Marla's heart pounded in her ears, her mind raced with questions. Why would the CEO of Hartwell Industries have a photo of her mother on his desk? They had never spoken of any connection. Had her mother known him? Worked for him? The thoughts swirled until she felt dizzy. She was about to get up, to ask anyone what this meant, when a door near the desk opened. A tall man stepped into the room. He looked older than the photo, with gray streaks in his dark hair, and tired eyes behind stylish glasses. Marla recognized him from magazine articles and company news. Gerald Hartwell. "You must be Marla," he said with a polite smile, reaching out to shake her hand. "Thank you for coming." Marla stood slowly, trying to hide the storm inside her. "Thank you, Mr. Hartwell," she managed, hoping her voice didn't shake. "Please," he said, motioning toward the chair in front of his desk. "Call me Gerald." She sat down, still stealing glances at the photo on the desk. He followed. Her gaze. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said softly, his smile fading. Marla hesitated. The words hovered on her tongue, too heavy to speak. Gerald noticed the shift in her mood. His expression grew more serious.
"Oh."
"Do you recognize her?" he asked gently. She nodded, her voice a whisper. "That's my mother." Gerald blinked. Clearly stunned, he looked back at the photo as if seeing it for the first time. Lynette?" he asked. "Yes," Marla replied, her heart beating faster. A long silence fell between them. Quiet hum of the city outside was the only sound. In the room, Gerald finally sat down, his hands folded in front of him. "She was... very special to me." Marla stared, unable to speak. She had come here expecting a normal job interview. Instead, she had found a hidden connectional piece of her past she never knew existed. What had started as an opportunity for work had now become something far more complicated, and Marla had no idea what would come next. That evening, Marla sat at the small kitchen table in her apartment, her hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea. Her grandfather sat across from her, his eyes full of quiet concern. "How was the interview?" he asked, stirring a spoon slowly through his cup. Marla hesitated. How could she begin to explain what had happened? She took a deep breath. "I saw a photo of Mom in the CEO's office," she said. "On his desk. Same photo we have on the fridge." Her grandfather's spoon paused mid-stir. "What?" "And he recognized her," Marla continued. "He said she was someone he loved. They were close." The old man sat back in his chair, stunned. "Lynette never told me about anyone like that. She kept a lot to herself, but someone that important? No. She never said a word." Marla looked down. "He said she left him suddenly, sent him a letter, told him not to contact her again, but that doesn't sound like her, does it?" "Not at all," her grandfather said quietly. "Your mother was strong, but she wasn't cold. If she cared about someone, she would never just vanish." A deep silence fell between them. Later that night, Marla lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. She couldn't stop thinking about the letter, the photo, the way Gerald's eyes had filled with pain when he said her mother's name. Something wasn't right. She could feel it. The next morning, Marla returned to Hartwell Industries not for an interview, but for answers. Gerald met her in the same office. This time, there was no polite small talk. He looked more tired than before, as if the night had given him no rest. "I haven't stopped thinking about it," he said, motioning for her to sit. "It's been over 20 years, but the moment you said her name, everything came rushing back." Marla nodded. "You said she sent you a letter. Do you still have it?" Gerald reached into a drawer and pulled out a small aged envelope. "I kept it all these years. Couldn't bring myself to throw it away." Marla unfolded the paper carefully. The handwriting looked neat, clean. Her eyes scanned the words. They were cold, distant, not at all like the woman who raised her. Double quotes. "This isn't how she wrote," Marla said, her voice trembling. "My mother always had a little loop at the end of her Y's. And look here, the way she signed her name. It's wrong. It's close, but not right." Gerald leaned closer. Eyes widened. "You're right. How did I not see that before?" "Because you trusted it," Marla replied. "You were hurt. You believed it because you had no reason not to." Gerald stared at the letter, something shifting in his expression. "Always wondered. Deep down I knew it didn't feel like her, but what else could I do?" She disappeared. Marla looked up. "What if someone didn't want you two together?" Gerald leaned back in his chair, thinking. There were people back then who didn't like distractions, especially not when I was being considered for the top role at Hartwell. Lynette was smart, outspoken. She challenged me. Maybe someone thought she was a threat. Do you remember? "Anyone who would have wanted to come between you?" Arla asked. Gerald nodded slowly. "Henrik. He was my advisor at the time, loyal to the company more than to me. He always said love made leaders weak. Can we talk to him?" Marla asked. Gerald pulled out his phone. "He retired years ago, moved to the suburbs, but yes, we can try." Later that afternoon, they drove to a quiet neighborhood where Henrik now lived. His house was modest, and the man who answered the door looked older, softer than Marla expected. Gerald, Henrik said with surprise. "It's been years. We need to talk," Gerald replied. "About Lynette, and about a letter." Henrik invited them in and offered tea, though the tension was thick in the room. Gerald handed him the old letter. "Did you ever see this before?" Henrik stared at it for a long moment. Then he sighed. I didn't write it, he said, but ... I delivered it. Marla's heart skipped a beat. I was told to pass it along to you, Henrik continued. I didn't read it. I just did what I was told. I assumed Lynette had written it. Who gave it to you? Gerald asked. Henrik hesitated. Someone. From Internal Affairs, I never got his full name. Just called himself Bray. Gerald's face darkened. Bray was part of the old risk department. They handled personal issues quietly. Marla frowned. Do you think he forged the letter? Wouldn't surprise me, Gerald said. He had access to everything. And if someone thought Lynette was going to distract me or dig too deep into company secrets, they'd find a way to remove her. Henrik looked genuinely sorry. I had no idea. If I had known, I swear I would have done something. Marla stood up. My mother didn't run away. Someone pushed her out. And if that's true, we need to find out who. Gerald nodded slowly. And why? They left the house as the sun began to set, shadows stretching across the quiet street. Marla felt a new fire in her chest. What had once been just a strange photograph on a desk had now become a path one that might lead to the truth about her mother's past, and she wasn't going to stop walking it. The next few days passed in a blur. Marla and Gerald barely slept, their minds too full of questions and half-formed theories. Every clue seemed to lead to a dead end or worse. 2 more questions. Gerald had a contact who might help. Her name. Was Claire, a young journalist known for writing about corruption in the business world? She had helped expose several shady practices in the past and wasn't afraid to dig deep. Even when it made people uncomfortable. They met Claire at a quiet cafe outside the city. She had short dark hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Listened carefully as Marla and Gerald explained everything Lynette, the letter, the strange disappearance, and the name Bray from Hartwell's old internal affairs team. I've heard of Bray, Claire said, stirring her coffee slowly. He used to work in corporate risk, handled things the board didn't want made public. He vanished years ago, just disappeared. No paper trail, no goodbye. That alone says a lot. We think he was involved in pushing Lynette away, Marla said. Maybe even more than that. Claire nodded. That's true. There's a bigger story here. I'll help you. But if this leads where I think it might, you need to be ready. Some people don't want the past uncovered. Gerald frowned. You think someone's still covering it up? Yes, Claire said simply. And not just to protect reputations. There are rumors about a man known only as the Whisper. He's not just a fixer. He runs an entire network behind the scenes. People like Bray were just pawns. Who is he? Marla asked, leaning forward. No one knows, Claire replied. He's never been photographed, never mentioned by name in any official record. But he's real. And if your mother was getting too close to something she wasn't supposed to see, Dottie might have been the one to make her disappear. Marla felt a chill run down her spine. Do you think he had her killed? I don't know, Claire said, her voice quieter now. But it wouldn't be the first time someone in his way ended up dead. They sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of that truth settle in. Then Claire pulled out her tablet and opened a folder. I've been keeping tabs on old Hartwell records. I found something odd. There was a property off the books registered to a shell company that ties back to Hartwell. It used to be a storage facility. Gerald sat up straighter. Remember that place? We used it for sensitive records. It was shut down years ago. Maybe, Claire said, tapping the screen. But according to the city's records, the power bill is still being paid. Someone's keeping it running. You think there could still be files there? Marla asked. It's possible, Claire said. If your mother was involved in something bigger, the truth might still be hidden in that building. That night, the 3 of them drove to the edge of the industrial district. The streets were quiet, and the building looked abandoned, with boarded-up windows and rusted locks. But when Gerald tried the back door, it creaked open with ease. Inside, the air was heavy with dust. Marla pulled her jacket tighter as they moved through dark hallways lit only by their flashlights. They passed rows of old filing cabinets, some broken, others still sealed. Claire found a metal cabinet in the far corner, still locked. Gerald forced it open with a metal rod, and inside were dozens of folders, each marked with codes and dates. Marla sifted through them until she saw a name. She recognized Lynette Halden. She pulled out the file with shaking hands. It was thick, filled with surveillance reports, phone records, and typed notes. Someone had been watching her mother, tracking her every move. "These reports go back months," Marla whispered. Before she disappeared, they knew where she went, who she talked to, ... everything. Gerald's face was pale as he read over her shoulder. This isn't just observation, it's planning. Someone was preparing to act. They found another file marked Priority Clearance Level 3. Inside was a single name, Bray, and beneath it, a short note. Task completed, subject removed. No further contact authorized. Marla's knees went weak. Gerald caught her before she fell. "They killed her," Marla said. "They planned it." Claire's face was grim, and they left a trail. This is what we need." But before they could gather the rest of the files, they heard a noise, footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from the front of the building. Gerald turned off his flashlight. "Someone's here." They moved quickly, grabbing as many files as they could carry. Claire led them out a side door, just as a flashlight beam appeared in the hallway behind them. Once outside, they didn't speak until they reached the car. "We're not safe," Claire said. "Whoever's protecting this secret knows we're close. We need to disappear for now. Lay low. Study what we found." Marla looked down at the folder in her lap. Her mother's name printed in black ink across the top. "We're going to finish this," she said quietly. "For her?" Gerald nodded. "We will. No matter what it takes." Marla sat in a cramped motel room on the city's edge, a single bulb buzzing overhead. Piles of papers covered the bed, surveillance notes, payment logs, and the grim order that sealed her mother's fate. Gerald paced near the window, pulling the curtain aside every few minutes to check the parking lot. Claire leaned over a laptop, her fingers dancing across the keys. "Theo's almost finished," Claire said, referring to the quiet programmer she had called for help. "He's tracing the email chain we found. If the sender slips up just once, he'll pin an address." Marla swallowed hard. "And if he doesn't?" "Then we break in the old-fashioned way," Claire replied. "But let's give him a chance." Theo arrived just past midnight, clutching a backpack full of cables. He didn't waste time on greetings. He plugged in, eyes fixed on the glowing screen. Minutes stretched into an hour until he finally exhaled. "Got it," he whispered. Messages route through a private server at a villa outside town. Same shell company that paid Bray. Whoever sits in that villa is the person behind all of this. Gerald's face tightened. "Corin's villa." He looked at Marla. "My cousin bought it years ago. I always thought it was strange money for someone who never liked risk." Marla remembered the coded phyla, single line, hinting that Bray took orders from C. Her pulse quickened. C for Corin? Could he be the Whisper? "Only one way to know," Claire said. They left before dawn, Theo staying behind to act as their eyes from the motel. The road wound through hills until high gates came into view. Vines crawled along tall stone pillars, and cameras watched from every angle. Gerald parked under trees, shutting off the engine. "We walk from here." They crept along a service path and reached a side door. Claire produced a slim toolkit, and within seconds the lock clicked open. Inside, the hallway smelled of cedar and old secrets. Dim sconces threw soft light onto marble floors. Marla held back a tremor. "We stick together." Rooms branched. Left and right library, study, gallery, each empty, yet perfectly kept. It felt like a place designed to impress but rarely lived in. At the end of a corridor, faint voices drifted from behind double doors. Gerald pressed his ear to the wood, then pushed the door an inch wider. Inside stood Corin, flanked by two suited guards. He was speaking into a headset, facing a wall of monitors. On one screen flashed a map of Hartwell's global holdings. On another, scrolling lines of code. "Everything is contained," Corin said into the mic. "Bray's archive was relocated last night. If the girl resurfaces, we'll address it." Marla's chest burned with anger. She stepped forward before Gerald could stop her, shoving the door open. "Address it now," she said, voice shaking but loud. Corin spun, surprise flashing across his face, then smoothing into a thin smile. "Marla, cousin Gerald. I was expecting sooner or later. You've been busy." Gerald took a step forward. "Busy cleaning up your mess? Why, Corin? Why, Lynette?" Corin adjusted his cufflinks like the question bored him. "You were on the brink of a merger that would make Hartwell unstoppable," he said to Gerald. Then Lynette turned up with questions about environmental audits. One whistle, and the deal would die. The board asked me to remove the risk. I did what was necessary. Marla's hands balled into fists. "My mother was not a risk. She was a person." "She was leverage," Corin replied coldly. "Nothing personal." Claire slipped a small recorder from her pocket, thumb hovering over a red button, and lifted her phone, covertly streaming. Marla noticed and gave the slightest nod. "You call murder necessary?" Gerald's voice cracked. "Don't be dramatic," Corin sighed. "Accidents happen every day." "And Bray?" Claire asked, stepping forward. "You forced him into hiding." "He served his purpose," Corin said with a shrug. "People who know where the bodies are buried rarely retire peacefully." Behind Marla, one guard shifted, hand moving to his jacket. Theo's voice burst through Claire's earpiece. "2 more guards headed your way. 3 minutes." Gerald saw the twitch in the guard's shoulder. "Let Marla go, Corin. It ends with you." Corin smirked. "It ends when I say." He raised a hand to signal the guard. "Could draw," Marla yelled. "Stop!" and flung a heavy bookend from a side table. It struck the guard's wrist, sending his pistol skittering across the floor. Chaos erupted. Gerald tackled the second guard. Claire hit the recorder's button, and Marla dashed to seize the fallen gun. Corin backed toward the monitors, eyes wide. "Think, Marla. You shoot me, and Hartwell's lawyers shred you alive." "You already shredded my family," she said, voice steady now. "The world deserves to know." Claire held up her phone. "It already does. Live stream, thousands watching." Corin's bravado faltered. "What do you want?" Confession, Marla said. "Tell them exactly what you did." Sirens wailed in the distance. Edo had tipped local police. Corin glanced at the door, realizing escape was gone. Sweat glistened on his brow. "Fine," he muttered, words barely audible. "I authorize Bray to remove Lynette Halden. She threatened our interests." "I'm the whisper satisfied." Claire repeated louder. "Say it clearly." Corin swallowed. "I'm the whisper. I ordered the operation." The room fell silent except for sirens growing closer. Marla lowered the gun, tears stinging her eyes. Minutes later, police stormed in, cuffing Corin and the guards. An officer took Marla's statement while another copied Claire's live footage, now trending online under hashtag Voice of the Whisper. Dawn painted soft pink light over the villa as Corin was led away. Gerald stood beside Marla, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "It's over," he said, though his voice carried years of sorrow. Marla looked toward the horizon. "Not over, but the truth is out. That's a start." Weeks passed. Hartwell's board resigned in shame. Government investigators raided hidden accounts. And Bray resurfaced to testify under protection. Lynette's name appeared in headlines. As a hero silenced too soon. One bright morning, Marla returned to the Hartwell Tower not as a nervous applicant, but as a guest speaker. She stepped onto the stage of a large auditorium. Gerald and Claire seated in the front row. Executives, employees, and journalists filled the seats. Waiting, Marla cleared her throat, the microphone amplifying her calm voice. Years ago, the story was buried to protect power. Today we remember Lynette Halden and every voice that was forced into silence. Truth has a way of breaking through because people choose courage over fear. Applause rose, warm and steady. Marla felt her mother's presence like sunlight on her skin. She smiled, not just for the crowd, but for Lynette, for the promise that no secret stays hidden forever when hearts refuse to give up. Outside, The city buzzed with new energy. Marla stepped into the morning light, ready to build a future not built on shadows, but on truth and hope that would never vanish again.